Hi, this is Free Thinking Through the Fourth Turning. My name is Sasha Stone. How did Orwell know of thought crimes, children spies, and the hope for a better future? A few days ago, a reporter from one of the trades asked me for an interview. I knew there could only be one reason she would want to interview me, and it wasn't to talk about how I ran a website for 25 years on the Oscar race. It wouldn't be that I raised a baby as a single mother and launched my site out of a guest house in Van Nuys, California, or that I'd worked as a sports photographer, a fake horoscope writer, a film reviewer, a janitor, and a teacher's aide, to raise my daughter without sending her to daycare and somehow built a successful business anyway. No. This had to be about my politics and why they changed. How did a Barack Obama devotee, and I'm with her Hillary Clinton supporter, and a Joe Biden faithful from way back, find my way into not only voting for Trump, but actively trying to help the Republicans defeat the Democrats? Now that's a story. How did an Oscar blogger become a far-right radical? The pitch wasn't exactly about that. It was more about how I plan to navigate being a dissident heretic while also running a successful business in an industry that is now the same organism as the government. I've been asked this question many times by people on the right and have given many interviews to explain what happened to me. But this is the first time anyone on the left, or inside the bubble of the left, asked me to explain it. And that's because 1, 2, 3, all eyes are on me. I did a boo-boo on Twitter, and now that has me in the crosshairs at long last. It was one thing when I stood up for J.K. Rowling or Ansel Elgort, or when I pushed back on the hysteria that Green Book was racist. When Trump is involved, it's bigger than just your average internet pile-on. This time it could mean the end of whatever it is I built over at awardsdaily.com. The story will be about how my politics change, or more specifically, why I felt like I could get away with a satirical tweet that said white power while mocking the white dudes for Harris. Is it bad to mock white people? I thought they were fair game. Or is just saying those words bad? Some people decided that it meant something beyond that. I don't check my mentions anymore, so I had no idea this wave of hysteria was even occurring. But then a friend wrote to ask me about it. It was as though I was secretly joining the white power movement on Twitter and was signaling to all of my friends in the KKK that, look, it's cool to be white people celebrating our whiteness again. Of course it's not. It's just that they have a habit on the left of memory holding their insanity and moving the goalposts we're all supposed to keep up. 4 years ago, there could have been no white dudes for Biden or white dudes for Barack Obama. It would be called any number of things, from white saviorism, which this most surely was, and even borderline racism. But not in 2024. Anything goes because they say so. I could have deleted the tweet and apologized profusely. But I know the game, brother. They once called me a white supremacist for saying it wasn't only white people who committed hate crimes. Fact check, true. But in my world, no matter how crazy or blatant the hypocrisy gets, you should never say a word about it. Apologize and beg for forgiveness. Maybe they'll give you a break. No, they won't. They will screenshot the tweet and send it around and around. By the end of this madness, it will land in the lap of a reporter who wonders, what happened to her? How did Orwell know enough to write Children's Spies in 1984? How did he know the young would be so susceptible to fanaticism? Because of course he knew. That's why capturing the youth is so important to cults and utopias, and why they separate kids from the parents, as the Democrats are trying to do now.
You're a thought criminal.
It's my own fault. I could have shut up, kept my head down, and complied with all of the demands like they do. write like they do, believe what they believe, and always apologize for mistakes made. I could have done that. But then I think about Winston Smith and 1984. How did Orwell know? He knew that utopias must become totalitarian dystopias, because how else to maintain the purity and the vision? We're living everything from that book, even a government that has now been weaponized to punish thought crimes. They have condemned and convicted Trump and his supporters as racists, which means anything can be done to them, and no one will say a thing. Steve Bannon is in prison for the crucial months leading up to the election. The last time someone was in jail for that crime was Ring Lardner of the Hollywood 10. If Orwell wanted to write a book that would call out the future to warn us that this isn't what we want for our country, much less our culture, then loudmouths like Steve Bannon, Donald Trump, and me will have to take the hit because no one else will. Winston Smith is an obedient member of Oceania, whose thoughts take him to dangerous places. Big Brother doesn't like him remembering great books or language deemed useless. Even love is strictly forbidden. That's how Winston finds himself being forced to admit 2 + 2 = 5.
How many fingers, Winston?
4. 4. I suppose there are 4. I tried to see 5. I wish I could.
Which do you wish? To persuade me that you can see 5, or really to see them?
Really to see them.
Again? How many, Winston?
I don't know. I don't know.
Better.
I still feel like a liberal at heart. I still care about climate change. I still believe we should all have access to good health care, no matter how rich we are. So many of the issues that used to be standard for Democrats have been warped and distorted beyond the point of recognition. Safe, legal, and rare became forceful urgings to have abortions, to defy the GOP and the Supreme Court, just to have them all the time. Go to California and Gavin Newsom will pay for them. And though I think women should have the right to choose, only a monster would think that unlimited abortions are good for the soul of this country. They should be rare, because they're always a tragedy. Gun control has also been warped into yet more dogma for them. They blame the guns, only the guns, but never talk about the root causes, do they? They don't talk about psych meds. They don't talk about what's happening to men in this country. They don't talk about crime in the cities. They can't. It is verboten. Hollywood doesn't yet realize how bad things have gotten for them, how catastrophic the box office is, how bland so much of the endless content on streaming is. They know they can't make movies as good as they used to be, and they will never have that same resonance. They don't realize they're missing the essential thing that needs to be a thriving industry, the freedom and the courage to tell the truth. There are so many great stories to tell, yet no one is brave enough to tell them. Just look at what happened with the Biden presidency. But to tell it, they'd have to tell the truth, and there's no way they can. Not with George Clooney, Reid Hoffman, and Jeffrey Katzenberg calling the shots. Imagine, Netflix is not only a major donor to the Democrats and actively involved in pushing out Joe Biden and installing Kamala Harris, but also has a production deal with Barack Obama and is the #1 entertainment streamer for the public. Their version would have to be pure propaganda. How could it not be? Or this. A former reality TV host runs for president almost as a lark, accidentally wins and thrusts the entire country into chaos. The establishment government does everything it can to take him down, and yet Here he still stands, the hero's journey. Hollywood would never tell that story, although it once did. It was Frank Capra's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Jefferson Smith, like Trump, is thrust into the world of Washington. He is framed and crushed by the powerful establishment government. Trump isn't pure like Smith, of course, but it's close enough.
Mr. President, I wish to ask my distinguished colleague, has he one scrap of evidence to add now to the defense he did not give and could not give at that same hearing?
I have no defense against forged papers.
Committee ruled otherwise. The gentleman stands guilty, as charged. And I believe I speak for every member when I say that no one cares to hear what a man of his condemned character has to say about any section of any legislation before this House.
Right, Order, gentlemen.
Mr. President, I stand guilty as framed because Section 40 is graft. And I was ready to say so. I was ready to tell you that a certain man in my state, a Mr. James Taylor, wanted to put through this dam for his own profit. A man who controls a political machine and controls everything else worth controlling in my state. Yes, and a man even powerful enough to control congressmen. And I saw 3 of them in his room the day I went up to see him.
Will the Senator yield?
No, sir, I will not yield. And this same man, Mr. James Taylor, came down here and offered me a seat in this Senate for the next 20 years if I voted for a dam that he knew and I knew was a fraud. But if I dared to open my mouth against that dam, he promised to break me in two. All right, I got up here and I started to open my mouth, and the long and powerful arm of Mr. James Taylor reached into this sacred chamber and grabbed me by the scruff of the neck.
President, a point of order.
Mr. President.
Senator Payne will state it.
It was I who rose in this chamber to accuse him. He's saying that I was carrying out criminal orders on falsified evidence.
No, Mr. President.
He has imputed to me conduct unworthy of senator, and I demand that he be made to yield the floor.
Mr. President, I did not say that Senator Payne was one of the congressmen in that room.
I was in that room.
Order, gentlemen.
I accuse this man. By his tone, by his careful denials, he is deliberately trying to plant damaging impressions of my conduct. I'll tell you why we were in that room. Because Mr. Taylor, a respected citizen of our state, had brought with him the evidence against this man, and we were urging him to resign. Why? To avoid bringing disgrace upon a clean and honorable state. But he refused.
Mr. President, have I...
There was only one answer to a man like him. The truth, which I rose and gave to this body.
And once upon a time, they made a movie called Primary Colors that dared to criticize the Democrats, the Clintons. Imagine that.
I'm sorry, Louis, there's just no discussion. You're right. None. Henry and me have already decided this dies here. I don't think so. I'm sorry, sweetheart, but it does. And here's why. You know what this is? Test results on Jack's blood. Uncle Charlie's blood taken over the years, and this is the blood test report Jack gave me that proves he's not the father of Loretta McCollister's baby. And you know what, Jack? It's not your blood. Isn't that a riot? The blood sample Dr. Beauregard took was not from you. It was from Uncle Charlie. You sent him to have his blood tested in your place because you know good old Dr. Beauregard loves you, wants to teach those Yankees a lesson. Well, he's not going to love you enough to lose his license, Jack. Once he knows I have proof, he'll fold like a cheap accordion. I know that won't prove you are the father of Loretta's baby. In fact, I think you're not. But it proves you thought you might be. And that proves you her. And that will kill your chances. You would do that. You would end his political career. You see, Jack, she hadn't even heard. She isn't even upset that you fucked your 17-year-old babysitter. And you know why? It's never the cheat who goes to hell. It's always the one who we cheated on. That's why you can still talk in that tender-hearted voice about being in it for the folks. And Susie here can only talk in that voice from hell about your political career. Now, what kind of shit is that, Jack? Oh, excuse me, I forgot. It's the same old shit. It's the shit no one ever calls you on, ever. Because you're so completely special. Because everyone's always so proud of you. Me too. Me the worst. It just makes it a whole lot easier for me. I mean, it's totally depressing. What have I been doing this for my whole pathetic life? So here's the deal. If you move on Freddie Picker, who I think we all agree is a flawed but decent man, I move on you. Yes. I will destroy this village in order to save it.
There's a reason the two names are Smith, Winston, and Jefferson, because there used to be a thing called the everyman. That doesn't seem to exist anymore in movies, not really. Oh, they're all over the place in America, but Hollywood really doesn't care to tell those stories. It's been said that Aaron Sorkin is working on a sequel to The Social Network, only this time it will be about how Mark Zuckerberg allowed the January 6th insurrectionists to mobilize on the app, and look where it got us. No, their version of all this must end with Trump in jail, because no other ending will do. If they do that, maybe that will finally wake everyone up to what this country has become. Where else can it go? It always has to go to prisons or gulags or concentration camps or labor camps. But if they go that far, that might just wake everyone up to what this country has become. Hollywood can only save itself once it abandons its mass hysteria and mass delusion over Trump. It can't stop on its own. But if Trump does win, that might help dislodge some of it. It might speed up the empire's collapse. Every day on TikTok, I see another person who has gone through something similar. It always follows the same pattern. They become curious about Trump. They investigate. They find out who he really is. And they can't believe that they've been lied to by the media and the Democrats for almost 10 years. The truth is out there. You just have to know where to look.
I fell for this shit in 2016. I didn't even vote. I fell for it in 2020. I live in Idaho, so I was a closeted Biden voter. Yeah, I voted for Biden because the media and the TV and commercials, what felt like everybody, had me convinced that Trump was the devil. It's embarrassing to admit, but I was extremely uninformed. Actually didn't pay attention at all. I was the typical person that said, do whatever you want over there. As long as it doesn't hit my front doorstep, I'm good. So what changed? January 6th, I decided, something's going on here, and I'm going to start looking into Trump. That's what did it. I wanted to look into Trump. And the very first thing that popped up when I started doing my digging was the very fine people on both sides comment. So I decided to go watch that entire thing and thought, holy shit, we're being lied to. Oh my God, was it a life-changing moment? Because wouldn't you know it, right after I started looking into the claims against Trump and Republicans and conservatives, I became almost an activist. Started making videos, started trying to get the word out. You're being lied to. Here we are again. Same freaking playbook, different year. So let's talk Kamala Harris for 1 second. People want to say that she was a DEI hire. In part, maybe she was. But Biden didn't word it like that. He said he was going to hire a woman for his cabinet because he wanted his cabinet to reflect the rest of America. And by choosing Kamala Harris, he said she was the most qualified candidate to be VP of all the women in this country. And here we are, 2024, and they are trying to convince you not a VP or senator or anything like that. They're trying to tell you that this chick is the most qualified candidate in this country to be the commander-in-chief. If you believe that, that means you haven't moved out of your front doorstep realm and started looking into stuff. You don't care, and you should. You don't want to have the moment that I had. It was devastating to learn that everybody was lying. I hate being lied to. You don't want to have that moment after your vote. So just look into Kamala Harris. And you don't even have to vote for Trump. You can write in a candidate, but blindly...
So here's the bottom line. I left the Democratic Party after the 2020 election when I saw just how corrupt they'd become with all that money and power. I decided I would vote for any Republican once I saw that all of the Democrats were behind gender-affirming care on minors, and that they want gender ideology foisted on young kids and preschoolers through high school. I kept my politics mostly off my site and my public Twitter because I didn't want to jeopardize my business. But at some point, I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I had to use whatever dwindling platform I had to speak the truth. I decided to vote for Trump when they raided Mar-a-Lago. I became a Trump supporter when he became a convicted felon. I couldn't believe they went that far, even knowing everything I do about mass hysteria and what happens when it gets into government. If that means studios no longer want to advertise, so be it. I've spent over 20 years trying to help them get nominations and wins. Once that silent agreement is broken, well, maybe I can finally tell the truth about what really goes on in the Oscar game. I'm kind of looking forward to it. I've lived half my life online, almost 30 years by now. That's a long time. The one thing I always loved about the internet was that it was the one place where I could speak the truth and write from the heart. And if people wanted to read it, great. I've been compelled to do this almost every day of my life. The truth is, I haven't changed. The left changed. I was part of it. I followed the rules. I spoke the language. But when my survival depended on my going along with what I knew to be lies, that was when I had to jump off the fast-moving train and find solid ground. To do it any other way is the end of 1984. You see, it's a love story, not between Winston and Julia, but between Winston and Big Brother. It isn't enough to comply, follow the rules, do your job, and be a good citizen, no. You have to love Big Brother, and so Winston finally does.
Much had changed in him since the first day in the ministry of love, but the final, indispensable, healing change had never happened until this moment. The waiters were turning back to their work. One of them approached with the gin bottle. Winston, sitting in a blissful dream, paid no attention as his glass was filled up. He was not running or cheering any longer. He was back in the ministry of love, with everything forgiven, his soul white as snow. He was in the public dock, confessing everything, implicating everybody. He was walking down the white-tiled corridor with the feeling of walking in sunlight and an armed guard at his back. The long-hoped-for bullet was entering his brain. He gazed up at the enormous face. 40 years it had taken him to learn what kind of smile was hidden beneath the dark mustache. Oh, cruel, needless misunderstanding. Oh, stubborn, self-willed exile from the loving breast. 2 gin-scented tears trickled down the sides of his nose. But it was all right. Everything was all right. The struggle was finished. He had won the victory over himself. He loved Big Brother.
I couldn't live with myself or live at all if I did not have a mind that was free. If you take that away, you might as well take everything. Thank you for listening to my podcast. sashastone.substack.com. I will keep you apprised of the events as they unfold. Hopefully it won't be too bad. Maybe it will. We'll see. But remember, to thine own self be true.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills and put your helmet on. Ground control to Major Tom. Commencing countdown, engines on. Check ignition and may God's love be with you. This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade, and the papers want to know whose shirts you wear. Now it's time to leave the capsule if you dare. This is Major Tom to ground control. I'm stepping through the door, and I'm floating in a most peculiar way. And the stars look very different today. For here am I sitting in a tin can, far above the world. Planet Earth is blue, and there's nothing I can do. Spaceship knows which way to go. Tell my wife I love her very much, she knows. Ground control to Major Tom, your circuit's dead, there's something wrong. Can you hear me, Major Tom? Can you hear me, Major Tom? Can you hear me, Major Tom? Can you hear? Am I floating around my tin can, far above the moon? Planet Earth is blue, and there's nothing I can do.